Tonight, protesting students have moved back onto Memorial University's St. John's campus.
There were international students here, there were racialized students here, and it was extremely dangerous for them.
Of course, it was disruptive, it was chanting.
I think MUN has come quite a long way in responding to the protesters.
After 3 arrests last week, dozens returned today, so what's the next move?
They are interested in the almighty dollar. Just like big tobacconists, they don't care about your health.
This pharmacist says corner stores have a conflict and isn't surprised they want to keep nicotine on the shelf. Still to come, her health-conscious compromise. And finding ways to beat the heat. Parts of central and northeastern Newfoundland remain under a heat warning that's not letting up.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Protesters have returned to Memorial University in St. John's just days after they were forced out of a campus building. About 70 pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside the Arts and Administration building this morning, while others ventured inside the lobby. One of the demands is for MUN to divest itself from companies with ties to the war in Gaza. Students who set up an encampment were removed Friday. MUN had asked the protesters to vacate the arts building. Police and campus enforcement were brought in. 3 individuals were charged with trespassing, including Sadie Meese.
The actions that took place on Friday was some chanting in the hallways. We did 3 bouts of chanting at 8 a.m., 11 a.m., and around 2:30 for about 15 minutes. Of course, it was disruptive, it was chanting, but, you know, we did what we could to make sure that everybody was safe and prepared. And at the end of the day, it's a protest. Friday night was quite stressful, of course. We were winding down. We had some interviews and actions on Friday afternoon. And I had also spent quite a lot of time, several hours, attempting to get the fire department ruling. So we were having a just regular evening in the lobby, and a student came inside to tell us that the CEP had begun dismantling tents outdoors, and they hadn't come in to warn us or asked us if we'd like to collect our belongings. So immediately it was quite a stressful and chaotic situation because of the lack of communication.
I would say that their communications were not actually something that led us to believe that they were going to be using police to evict us from the building.
Luckily, there was my peers around me to help me calm down and to ground and center myself. But it was terrifying having all these CEP officers, just wordlessly shutting the doors around us, leaving only one entrance and one exit for us to go out of.
There were international students in that room, and the police officer even said there could be consequences for student visas. For others, the consequences could have been far worse. Luckily, we remained calm, and several marginalized students were able to safely exit the building. But they shut the big doors on either side of us, so there's only one exit, and the police were already there by 10 p.m. So students inside had no choice but to exit past the police.
We will continue to apply pressure and make sure that the university administration is held accountable for their actions, and that includes remaining invested in war crimes and what is internationally considered to be war crimes and to be genocide, and also the disgusting display of colonial violence that they perpetrated on Friday night.
Well, meantime, MUN's provost and academic vice president says the university has been patient with protesters who've occupied the space since May. Jennifer Lokash says MUN is taking cues from the University of Toronto, which got the green light to clear out a pro-Palestinian encampment from its downtown campus last week.
It's certainly my understanding that precedents that are set in other Canadian courts can be used and are applicable when the matters of law are the same. And this is a case where we're seeing a lot of the same types of behavior and protest activity from protest to protest. So it seems pretty clear to me that there are similarities.
We'll hear more of my conversation with Jennifer Locash still to come on the show, including her thoughts on Friday's arrests and what commitments the university is making as a result of the movement. Well, in other news, a group representing Canadian convenience stores wants the provincial government to step up and pledge to support small businesses by keeping nicotine pouches on store shelves. Here now's Jessica Singer has more.
Inside this container are nicotine pouches. Now, these are supposed to help people who are quitting smoking, but the federal government is concerned it's getting into the hands of too many youth. So, other governments like in BC and Quebec have moved this product out of convenience stores like this one and behind the counters of pharmacies. The federal government is on board with that, but not everybody likes that idea.
Unintendedly, we always become the people that get thrown under buses. And the fact that anyone could comment that we are the problem and that you need to move these products from a convenience store to another location kind of really hurts our feelings a little bit, because we have shown multiple times that we're responsible at selling beer, we're responsible at selling tobacco, we're responsible at selling vaping products. How could we not be responsible at selling pouches?
It's not clear what federal regulations might mean for this province, but Mike Hamoud's group says mandating nicotine products isn't the answer. Now, the only nicotine pouch legally sold in Canada is Zonic. It's owned by Imperial Tobacco Canada, but unlike cigarettes, there are no federal restrictions on how old you have to be to buy it. Stores represented by the CICC, like Marie's Mini Mart in North Atlantic, have their own age restrictions. No one under 19 can purchase the products. Dr. Leslie Phillips runs Memorial University's smoking cessation program. She thinks nicotine pouches belong behind a pharmacy counter.
The Retailers Association, Convenience Store Associations, they are all funded heavily by big tobacco. Like, they are biased. They are not interested in the health of the population. They are interested in the almighty dollar, just like big tobacco is. They don't care about your health. They want to sell these products.
But she says products like Nicorette gum aren't as attractive to youth. She believes restrictions on those could create a barrier for adults trying to quit. Hamoud says the Convenience Store Council would support advertising restrictions and a ban on fruity flavors. He says it's easy for kids to buy illicit pouches online with higher nicotine levels, and fears removing them from store shelves will only hurt small businesses and push young people towards other, potentially illegal options. Meanwhile, the province turned down CBC's request for an interview on this, but says it has seen an uptick in nicotine use in youth. In a statement, it said legislative changes will be made in consultation with the public. Jessica Singer, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, it seems World Energy GH2 is still on track to build 300 wind turbines on the Port-au-Port Peninsula. Back in April, the company passed its environmental assessment, getting the green light from the province to build the country's first wind-to-hydrogen project. Well, over the weekend, the Environment Minister said he considered objections from those who oppose the project, but decided to dismiss their appeal.
We put conditions in place for the release of the project. They have to all be met at varying levels. Some before any construction happens, some during construction, some at the end of construction, like decommissioning. There's also a significant amount of public consultation that they have to continue throughout the project, like they've done now in the beginning of the project, right throughout the entire process till its conclusion. So we put things in place that allow for those concerns that were raised to be mitigated, and obviously that's where we've upheld that decision.
The water is sure one way to beat the heat here in Lewisport. It was a great day for a backyard pool or a little dip in the pond. I'm sure there's lots of people who are, hoping that they are wishing that they had a pool today, especially with those temperatures out there. A number of heat warnings in place, but we've got a couple of systems in play as well. We've got an area of low pressure with a couple of fronts. Now, this ridge of high pressure that is dominating the weather at the moment anyway is very warm, but we do have that cold front moving through, which is eventually going to drop the temperatures. Take a look at the heat for all of eastern Canada, really. Temperatures anywhere from 24 to as much as 32 degrees today. And this heat is going to stick around at least for a couple more days. Environment Canada has a heat warning in place from Green Bay, White Bay, all the way through to Terra Nova. And then the upper Lake Melville area, as well as southeastern portions of Labrador. So we're going to see this heat continue tonight and into tomorrow for the most part. By the time we get into Tuesday evening, though, once that cold front moves through, we should see the temperatures drop up across the Big Land. And then that heat will stick around just a little while longer through at least the first half of Wednesday, and then we should see the heat at least for a little bit of a reprieve, but it will move back for the weekend. I'll get into all the details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. While on her trip to Newfoundland and Labrador, the Governor-General touched down in a traditional Innu camp. Mary Simon got the rare opportunity to visit the Mealy Mountain National Park Reserve overlooking Lake Melville. The CBC's Heidi Adder was there.
This is how Mary Simon started her day, helicoptered into Swallow Harbour, about 100 kilometers northwest of Happy Valley Goose Bay. The Governor-General was greeted by Elder Jangwish Elizabeth Panashaway before being welcomed to one of the sites where Innu hope to bring tourists in the future.
Innu people have always wanted to host non-Innu people, but they never had that opportunity because of the language, because of the culture. So with Governor-General's visit, it was very, very a welcoming event.
In the harbour, the Students on Ice vessel is anchored, being used by Innu Nation for a 2-week expedition. The crew is doing research and teaching Innu youth about science and the land. Simon was part of launching that very program 25 years ago, part of a legacy of continuing education.
They're learning more about the land and the waters of this region. I think that's always important for our Indigenous youth to be really involved in expeditions such as this one. And also, you know, the elder is here. They can learn from her knowledge as well.
For generations, Innu have traveled through this land. Simon and her husband stopped to visit the tents here, enjoying a meal of traditional country foods. The pair were also given the chance to fish on a nearby river.
They really were intrigued and really interested in coming back and learning more and supporting the idea and the vision that we want to expose to the world about this area and about the Innu culture as well. So it's really been kind of an eye-opener, and it's really nice to see that as a kind of a kickoff to opening the national park.
There's still work to be done before tourists can make their way to Mealy Mountain National Park. Simon was among the first to experience the landscape, the food, the culture that Innu hope to showcase to other visitors in the future. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Swallow Harbour, Labrador.
And while in Labrador, Mary Simon also presented a coronation medal to Valerie Courtois, a national leader in Indigenous-led conservation and stewardship. Created to honor the coronation of King Charles III, more than 30,000 medals will be handed out throughout the Commonwealth. Last week marked just the second time the Governor-General has given such an honor.
The Governor-General was allocated 100 of these medals to give out. Today, you will see her giving out number 2 of them.
Really touched to receive the King's Coronation Medal. So it's really special to receive that honor, and for her to have taken the time to do it here on the land, in a part of the world that really set me on my own personal and professional path. And so it was, I'm really touched and honored. I really hope that this was an experience that warmed her heart. I know that she has youth as one of her priorities as Governor-General, the environment and mental health, and all of those things are part of what we do here, and certainly a part of what Innu Nation does in terms of expressing its nationhood and its responsibility for places around Dasinan, including Akamua-Pishkin. So it's really touching to be here on this site for that visit, and for her to have just been able to enjoy the Innu-ness that we have here. I really hope that the youth saw themselves and that I'm just like them. We're all the same and everybody can make a difference in this world at so many scales. And I've been really privileged to have had opportunities in my professional life to help contribute to the advancement of Indigenous-led conservation and stewardship in what is now known as Canada. And I just think the sky's the limit. I hope that they leave that experience with hope that one day they may be there or their children may be there and making a difference and having that recognized. I also really am touched as an Indigenous woman to have received that medal, and for other Indigenous women in particular to see that leadership takes many forms, and they're already leaders. They already have every ingredient in them to do the very same and more than what I've been able to do, and I can't wait to see that happen.
Well, returning now to Memorial University's St. John's campus, students still have 1 week to register for a one-of-a-kind residence experience. 25 rooms in Curtis House are being reserved for Francophones.
It will help giving them the support they need so that they feel at home on campus, whether they're enrolled in Memorial University or College of North Atlantic.
And why is this sort of project important in a place like St. John's, where there isn't really a strong Francophone presence?
Well, it is for the students, also for the academic perspective, a way to promote the linguistic minority and within an Anglophone environment. So it brings both cultures, and we found that it's really important for them to feel that the French language does exist in Newfoundland and Labrador, and it is vibrant, it is alive, and people want to share their cultural backgrounds from different countries, and it is really diverse in the province. And we tend to forget that, but the Francophone immigration is raised by 10% within the last 5 years. So it's really strong. It comes from I think about 50 countries, Francophone countries around the world are currently in Newfoundland and Labrador. So the resident will bring this place for sharing and living together, a kind of spirit.
Well, an annual fundraiser on the Southern Shore was in full bloom this past weekend. Baskets of Hope is all about creating color and growing joy while destigmatizing a difficult topic. Each flower basket is created in honor of someone who lost their battle with mental health or addictions.
We have 11 baskets, and two are new this year. So that means there was 9 baskets that are reoccurring every year. So it is very special to a lot of people, so much so that they have their designs come back each year. Most of the designs are created with a particular loved one in mind. One new one this year that was designed by a community member is called Smile, and just simply put is because that their loved one had the most beautiful smile. Another one is entitled Nancy's Embrace, and the flowers are centered around like the person's warm nature. The one in particular is that I'm most familiar with is Jake's Heart. So that's centered around Jacob Pudister. Jacob Pudister is the reason that our organization is where we are today.
When Kelsey lost her brother, the whole community here in Babels felt it. And I really thought that we needed to help somehow. Somehow we needed to get the word out that, this shouldn't happen to our young people here in the province. And so we were trying to come up with a way to help that. And so I went to Pat, who's the owner of Pat's Plants and Gardens, and we talked about doing baskets, maybe doing baskets for the person that lost their battle with mental health. Each basket is special, each basket is unique. And I got involved because I wanted to help. I needed to help. I felt that there was a need and that we had an opportunity here to do that. And not make it a sad event, but make it to an event that people, when they come here, they feel comfortable in talking about their mental health. It's a really good feeling when I go home, because knowing that people get to see these, because they're beautiful and they know that their loved one is not just picking up today. I hope that they realize that from the minute that basket was started to be made, their loved one was thought about every time. When I pass by and have people come in and look at the baskets and they say, well, what's this one? I can name them all off. I know who they're for. They mean a lot. And so when I go home tonight, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to smile and think about all those people again tonight.
Stay tuned for Ashley's forecast.
Well, just before the break there, you got a quick glimpse of a few lovely young faces in front of the green screen. Well, they also got a bird's eye view of the CBC during their tour around the building today.
Yeah, a group of students from the Sharing Our Culture summer program stopped by our Parkway studio today, where they got to see how our CBC drone works.
Yeah, it was so nice of them to come by. I always love it when we have groups come in, get to show them around the building and the studio and the green screen. It's always a bit of fun, right?
Green screen is always a hit.
All right, so the heat, I guess, is what everyone's talking about. And how much longer is this gonna last?
Yeah, we've got another day or so up across Labrador, and then we'll see that eventually the heat, at least the heat warnings, will end more than likely on Wednesday across the island. But it isn't really going anywhere. We're still going to see some warm temperatures over the next little bit, but not quite as humid as we're seeing right now. Temperature 32 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Lab City topped off at 29, really all across Labrador into the mid to upper 20s, if not 30s. And then across the island, the hot spot was in Badger at 32 degrees. Otherwise, if you're in onshore flow, temperatures still really beautiful for the most part, 20 to 22 degrees. But away from that, definitely seeing that warm air. So St. John's topped off at 27 degrees so far today. Now, up across Labrador, we do have lots of thunderstorm activity. In fact, that green that's showing up there across Quebec is some thunderstorms. Lots of thunderstorm activity as well with any of these systems. So keep that in mind through tonight. And then earlier today, there was a bit of a cell that developed, a small cell that sparked some lightning as well, but it dissipated before it even got to Springdale. So other than that, if we zoom out, the picture really showing lots of clear sky. Now, there is some cumulus developing. That's what where we got that thunderstorm from. And it looks like there's some just off to the south as well. So don't be surprised if you see some of this cumulus move through, at least maybe over the next hour or so. It may drop a few showers. Other than that, the heat warning, really the story. Happy Valley Goose Bay through to the coast, seeing those warnings, and then Green Bay, White Bay through to Terra Nova. You are seeing those heat warnings as well. Why we're seeing the heat warnings is the fact that the temperatures overnight, you're not getting too much relief of that. So if we take a look at where we're sitting right now, 28, 29, 31 degrees is still quite hot out there. 32 still in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 27 in St. John. So it's still warm in St. John's as well. But we don't meet that criteria because our overnight lows are going to dip a little bit. So down to 16 areas through Central and up across Labrador. See, you're only going down to 18 or 19 degrees tonight. And then into tomorrow, that heat will move back in. Now, there is a risk of that thunderstorm activity continuing to track towards central and coastal areas of Labrador through the overnight. Otherwise, an absolutely beautiful evening tonight across most of the island with those mild temperatures, light winds overnight tonight. So a great night to enjoy the outside. And then as we head into the overnight, there's that potential for some thunderstorms that I was talking about where you're seeing that green. I think as we head towards after midnight and into the early morning hours towards the coast is where we will see that. But for the most part, this is where the risk will be tonight. As we head into tomorrow, we will continue to see that thunderstorm activity as well, especially for southeastern portions of Labrador where we could see some moderate risk. So that just means you could see some heavier rainfall with that and maybe some more gusty winds as well. So here's your forecast for tomorrow. That cold front will move through. Temperatures will drop in behind that. But again, still that risk. Now, by the time we get into 7, 8, 9 o'clock tomorrow night, I think that will be the best chance of some thunderstorms across Labrador. And then the risk of thunderstorms across the island as well. But like I said, the best chance of seeing those thunderstorms will be for the mostly western portion of Labrador, Northern Peninsula, and maybe parts of Central as well. So just keep that in mind for tomorrow. Overall, daytime highs again, mid to upper 20s, winds out of the south east around 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. Those of you along the southern areas of the island will still see decent temperatures, but only into the mid to upper teens. 28, 29 degrees through Central. Again, that risk of some thunderstorms showing up quite nicely with the risk on the west coast and Northern Peninsula and Green Bay, White Bay area there. But for overall, we're looking at southwesterlies anywhere from 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. And again, mid to upper 20s as your daytime highs. Bit humid again still tomorrow with those humidex values likely into the 30s. Now the northern peninsula, you'll see that risk of thunderstorms later in the day. 32 degrees in Mary's Harbor, so definitely still lots of heat. You will see that cold front move through and you will see a significant drop in temperatures. That's what I'm talking about, down to 16 degrees in Lab City tomorrow. Very different story from what you're seeing today. But again, it'll come back. I'll talk all about that in the long range.
Well, despite 3 arrests for trespassing on Friday night, pro-Palestinian protesters are once again back inside MUN's Arts and Administration building today. I spoke with MUN's VP Jennifer Lokash about MUN's decision to call the police to remove protesters on Friday night and what might happen tonight if protesters tried to remain inside the lobby. What's going to happen tonight if they decide that they're not going anywhere once the building closes?
Well, I think that we have made our position pretty clear that we really can't allow them to continue sleeping in a university building or camping on grounds that are intended for the use of study and work.
So does that mean that if they decide to stay tonight, we'll see a repeat of Friday night and maybe police showing up to remove them?
I guess that's a possibility. I certainly hope that the students will recognize that it would be better for them to come back tomorrow and begin their protest again in the morning.
Okay. So can you walk me through what happened on Friday night and why the university decided that night to remove the protesters from the lobby?
So yeah, the story of how we got to Friday night begins actually long before Friday night. We have allowed the students to be in the building and on campus for about 45 days now. We attempted to strike a compromise with them about 10 days ago to see if they would be willing to move out at night and come back again during the day. Again, you know, there are health and safety concerns, all kinds of issues with having individuals sleeping in the building. So we tried to reason with them through our lawyers, and they made it very clear to us that they weren't interested in deviating from their protest tactic unless the university was committed to divestment. So that was their position on that. On the 4th of July, Thursday, we, again, through the lawyers, let the students know that we really were no longer able to tolerate them sleeping in the building or having their tents on the grounds, and we were expecting them to leave. And that expectation was crystal clear as far as I'm concerned.
Was there any mention of the police being called to remove them?
I don't think there was a mention of the police at that time, but you know, if you go back to a CBC article from June 11th, you're going to see that we didn't rule out at that time that eventuality that might have happened. So they certainly had that in their minds, I would think, as something that could happen. They're also supported by legal counsel who would let them know what some of the next steps might be should they refuse to leave the premises when asked. There was also a St. John's Regional Fire Department work order. An unsatisfactory inspection was done because the students had chosen to move some of their tents into the lobby. So, you know, we had given them that expectation that they would move the tents out of the lobby. They did not do that. On Friday afternoon, the tents were still there. We'd also had reports from a number of individuals in our community that they were feeling a kind of increased level of harassing behavior and intimidation and disruption to the workplace that was making it difficult for people to do their jobs, you know, to the point where we had to send people home on Friday.
The protesters were chanting in the lobby?
Chanting and, you know, banging on the door, and they broke our doorbell, and, you know, that sort of thing. So those things together made us, again, sure that we really needed to draw the line on protesters sleeping in a university building for an indefinite period of time.
And some of the protesters told me that they were really frightened on Friday night. Some of them were part of like a more vulnerable population, and that they were told that if they were to be arrested, things like their visas could be affected by this. And they said that it was a really frightening experience for them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that the way that the protesters are publicly framing the events don't really gel with my understanding of what happened. And to me, it looked like a dialogue was going on. No one was locked in or out of anything. I mean, students were there with the CEP officers that they've basically been living with for the last month, people who were there to support them. I also think it's worth noting that these are adults and they are making informed choices.
The question still hangs in the air about whether the protesters will decide to leave tonight. But beyond that, what kind of dialogue is planned going forward, or what's MUN's position on what happens next?
So one of the other things that we're doing with the students is working on a joint statement that affirms the university's commitment to peace and social justice and equity, that joins the calls for a lasting ceasefire in the region, that notes that the targeted attacks on academic institutions are, that those are a real assault on the very essence of education and academic freedom. These are powerful statements, and it's much farther than most universities, or any, I think, as far as I know, have gone in terms of working with students on a joint statement. So I hope they're going to see these things as wins. They certainly have a lot to be proud of for what they have accomplished already, and we are continuing to work with them. We have a meeting set up with them for July the 12th this week.
132 years ago today, the city of St. John's was burning. The Great Fire of 1892 would ultimately level the city, destroy hundreds of homes, and displace more than 10,000 people, not to mention the millions of dollars in damages. We dipped into the Here and Now archives to bring you this special report from the 100th anniversary of the Great Fire back in 1992 with the CBC's Otso Rizori.
St. John the Baptist, the Anglican Cathedral in St. John's, built like a chunk of eternity. But even this bastion of permanence was no match for the Great Fire of 1892.
There was nothing saved, not a bit of furnishings, not one single thing. There's a couple of bits of burnt timber in the museum, that's all. No, it was a hard day for the cathedral.
It was a hard day for everybody. Half the city was burning. 5 major fires swept through St. John's in the 19th century, but this was the biggest of them all.
Really, it's an unwritten law. You shouldn't go into a barn with a lighted pipe.
The fire started toward evening in the barn of Aloysius O'Brien's grand-uncle, Tim O'Brien.
One of Tim's employees, Paddy Fitzpatrick, he was having to be smoking in the barn, and some hay ignited, spark from the pipe, you know.
Paddy Fitzpatrick's pipe started it. Lack of water that day allowed it to spread unchecked, and a strong easterly drove it in 2 fronts across the city. The city burned all night. Miraculously, only 2 people were dead, but 12,000 were homeless. The damage was estimated at 20 million Newfoundland dollars. It would be several hundred millions today.
My father and my aunts, everything with them was before the fire or since the fire or something like that. They always dated everything with respect to the date the fire took place.
On the day itself, it would always be recalled. My father used to always say, this is the day, the Great Fire.
A small collection of more concrete reminders is on display at the Anglican Cathedral. One of the old church's keys, lead which melted down from the stained glass windows, fragments of possessions owned by people who brought them to the cathedral thinking they would be safe there. But the night of July 8, 1892 wasn't going to be a night of miracles. It remains in the books as the last and most destructive of the great fires. For CBC News, I'm Otso Rizori.
Well, the problems keep growing at Boeing. The Federal Aviation Administration in the U.S. has announced mandatory inspections on 2,600 737 jets because of potentially faulty oxygen masks. That comes as the company agreed to plead guilty and pay a fine for a fraud charge stemming from the deadly crashes of 2 737 MAX jetliners. CBC's Paul Dehacek has more.
5 years after the Ethiopian Airlines crash that killed his daughter, Chris Moore is still mourning.
Our family is shattered. We are still stuck in 2019.
Boeing will plead guilty to a criminal fraud charge stemming from that crash and from another one 5 months earlier in Indonesia. A total of 346 people died. A 2021 fraud charge alleged the company misled regulators about flight control software used in its new 737 MAX 8 planes and about how much training pilots needed to use it safely. Boeing struck a deal to avoid criminal prosecution, but failed to follow its terms. That led to this plea deal. If a judge accepts it, Boeing will pay a $243 million fine, invest at least $455 million in its compliance programs, and get oversight from an independent monitor.
This is a drop in the bucket. This is something they can easily afford.
This corporate governance expert says the plea deal is a way for Boeing to avoid the legal cost and reputational damage of a long trial.
Although they don't seem to have any problem creating their own reputational damage, on an ongoing basis recently.
One example of that this January, a door plug that blew off an Alaska Airlines flight. The U.S. Justice Department says this plea deal is for the two crashes and doesn't give Boeing immunity for recent incidents. The guilty plea will be entered in U.S. District Court sometime this month, but Chris Moore says he wants the judge to reject it and order a criminal trial.
That is the only way that all the facts can be put on the table.
In a statement, Boeing confirmed to CBC News it had reached an agreement but would not provide further details. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Well, Hurricane Beryl has been downgraded to a tropical storm. It roared ashore in central Texas as a Category 1 hurricane early this morning. It's now expected to turn north and east, crossing Louisiana and Arkansas. The storm brought winds topping 120 kilometers an hour, storm surges that were up to 2 meters above normal tides, and more than 20 centimeters of rain in some areas. Schools were closed today. More than 1,000 flights have been canceled and some beach communities evacuated. More than 2 million customers were left without power. At least 2 deaths were reported in Texas caused by trees falling on homes. Well, one of the driest places on Earth is exploding with colorful blooms. A desert in northern Chile is usually a desolate place, but the early arrival of winter rains in the southern hemisphere has the rocky dunes erupting with purple and white flowers. The so-called flowering desert occurs every few years, usually in conjunction with the weather phenomenon known as El Niño. More rain is in the forecast, and that's expected to enhance the blooms. The last time this happened was 2015. Well, what a beautiful day out there today. You know where I wish I was today? I would love to be down at St. Vincent's to see the whales. Yeah. Apparently, it's still quite the show down there.
And it's beautiful blue sky today, nice and warm, which doesn't always happen.
Did you get out at all on the weekend?
Yeah, went to Cape Spear for the weekend, or for Saturday, and went for a hike with the dogs and saw some whales. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it's great.
Finally.
I'm sure the tourists love it.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
As do we.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got heat for one more day, but it is going to cool down a little bit, but also get a bit more rainy by the time we get into Wednesday, which is good because it'll water the plants.
That's right.
Let's take a look at what's going on out there. So that cold front's going to sweep through on Tuesday evening. That is going to drop the temperatures across Labrador. That's also when we're looking at the risk of some thunderstorms. But as we head into Wednesday morning, it looks like the risk of thunderstorms will be the story for most of western Newfoundland through central and maybe even towards the evening hours. We may hear a few rumbles of thunder further east as well. So we're going to keep an eye on that one. But like I said, mostly unsettled through the day. Now, temperatures are still going to be warm. They're going to be below warning criteria, mid-20s, mid to upper 20s, but again, still below warning criteria. A little cooler for the west coast, though, only reaching about 20 degrees through the day. And much cooler, much more comfortable up across Labrador as well. So you're looking at temperatures in the teens, barely reaching 20 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, but it'll still be decent through the afternoon. Now, as we head into the evening hours and Thursday, some more showers certainly possible up across Labrador. It does look like it'll stay a bit cloudy. We've got the return of more northerly flow, which means temperatures are going to be cooler as well. Especially across the island, but still looking at some showers for the northern peninsula, southeastern portions of Labrador through the day, and that will move through quickly, should clear as we head into the evening, especially up across Labrador, but hanging on to that chance of some showers for mainly eastern Newfoundland through the evening and overnight. Overall, daytime highs starting to climb back up for Labrador, so temperatures will be in the 20s. Between 20 and 24 degrees through the day. A little cooler for the northern peninsula. Again, anywhere in onshore flow, including St. John's, will be a bit cooler. So only about 16 or 17 degrees. That's a little bit below where we should be sitting this time of year. But otherwise, we're looking at between 20 and 22 degrees through the day on Thursday. Now, the long-range forecast, we will see a warm-up. Back up to where we should be sitting this time of year, although Friday and Saturday do look a bit unsettled. There's still a chance of some showers in the mix there, although today's forecast, long-range forecast anyway, looks a bit better with some sunshine in the afternoon. But don't be surprised to see some rain. Overall, daytime highs will be between 22 and 23 degrees. Now, for central Newfoundland, you'll see a little bit more of a warm-up, so between 24 and 26 degrees through the day, and again unsettled. Your overnight lows Friday night, 19 degrees, so it is going to stay mild. And then for western Newfoundland, after those showers on Wednesday, Thursday looks gorgeous, but Friday, Saturday looking more gray with the chance of showers as well. So your daytime highs will sit around 23 degrees. Now for Labrador, you're a bit of a roller coaster. So eastern Labrador, you're going to see that temperature drop again on Friday, but back up for Saturday. It does look like some dry conditions right through to Saturday, but for western Labrador, your temperatures will stay pretty mild, anywhere from 21 to 23 degrees through the day, but dry. The forecast looks pretty dry with some sunshine. Speaking of Labrador, this is a shot of Sandwich Bay. Clint shared this great shot with us. And if you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, we love to see them. You can send them to my Facebook page or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, that's another beautiful shot. Thank you so much for that, Clint. I hope we get those thunder showers on Wednesday. I love a good thunder and lightning storm.
It takes a while. It takes a bit for them to get here, but most of the time they don't make it. But we'll see.
And I feel like this year I can't complain about the rain.
No.
You know, like we've been getting a lot of rain, but it is a good thing when you look at what's happening out west with like the heat dome and how hot it is and the fires and stuff. So yeah, welcome the rain.
Yes.
Okay, well that's it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night.